Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. And in this video, what I want to do is just talk about the library Formik. Formik is a React library that's going to make one of the things that a lot of people get really confused with on React a lot easier. That's forms. I mean, I technically in my custom hooks library, Merced React Hooks, I have a hook that does something similar to this, but Formik is actually a really popular library. And the reason why it's good to know as many different ways to do the same thing as possible is because you never know which way you're going to be using on the job that you eventually land, or you might switch to, or etc. So in that case, let's talk about Formik. So if you've ever done React and done forms in React, in which in that case, if you haven't, you should do that first. There's generally a few steps you have to do when you're doing it with like hooks. You have to create a piece of state to hold all the data from the form. You have to bind the values of the form to the state. You have to update the state every time the form changes using an onChange function, and you create like a function called handle change. And then when the form is submitted, you have to have like a submit function. Okay, and you have to kind of wire these things all together, which once you've done it a few times makes sense, but for a lot of people, it's a lot of moving parts. So what Formik does, it tries to kind of automate as much of this as possible using a custom hook. It's just saying, okay, hey, use the custom hook. We'll give you back, the state. We'll give you back your submit function. We'll give you back your handle change function. You just plug them into your form, and it will just work. So let's try this out. I'm going to create a new React project. So I'm going to open up my terminal here in my little practice folder. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say npx create React app. I'm going to use @latest. I'm just using @latest all the time now with npx, because what I've noticed in the more recent versions of npm is that npx doesn't just automatically use the new version. It caches a version, and I haven't figured out really how to clear that cache. I've tried different cache clearing commands, but it still always seems to want to use the older version of create React app. So what I'm doing is I'm just going to add the @latest flag, so that way it always uses the latest version every time of create React app. So anytime I use npx, I always just add the @latest at the end. Okay, so we're gonna call this my forms practice. Okay, so that's gonna just do all the things. And then once this is done installing, we'll then install Formik and get to work. Cool. So let's see here. Now I'm going to cd, not into the practice folder, I want to cd into forms practice. So I'm going to cd into forms practice, and then I'm going to npm install Formik. So now, just you can see here, like where they use it. So what they're doing is that they use this hook, and this hook then returns everything in this object called Formik. So what we're going to do is we're going to see if we can destructure that, but we'll do it one step at a time. And we can kind of see what we would destructure it as, because we can see Formik.handle change, Formik.values, Formik.handle submit. But first, let's just get it set up. So I'm going to open up this folder. Now that I'm in here, I'm going to do npm start so we can see an example in the browser. Okay. So I'm going to do that. Good. I open up my source. I'm going to clear out all this boilerplate stuff out of header. Or I mean out of... oh, that's right. I put in the Vim extension on VS Code, and I'm still kind of getting used to how that works. Oh. Let's see here. I just want to delete it. I'll just right click it, cut it out. I'll have to go back and look up what the Vim commands I'm looking for are. Okay. So now I need to go into like insert mode. That's I, and again, it's because I have the Vim extension on VS Code, so that's why it's taking me a second to kind of. I just installed it like an hour ago, so I'm getting used to it. And I'm not a really big Vim user, but I figured this would be a good way for me to get used to it. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to import Formik. So I want to import, and then again the hook. We want to import the specific hook that they use. So let's just take a look at the docs. Okay, use Formik is the hook. Use Formik from Formik. Goody. Okay, so we have Formik. Okay, good. Now what I want to do is create the stuff for the form. So I'm going to create a simple form, 2 fields, name and age. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say const Formik. I'm just going to follow their pattern. Equals use Formik. Okay, and that's the function. And what we're doing is we're passing in an object with certain properties. One, like what are the initial values of the form? Okay, so the initial values of the form is just basically the object we would have normally passed to a new piece of state. So in this case, it's just name with a blank string and age with a number. In this case, 0. The next property we have to define is the onSubmit. So this will be what our onSubmit function is. So this function is going to receive the values from the form, and then we do whatever we want to do in that form. I just want to console.log the values. Okay, I'm fine with that, just to show that it's working. Okay, and that's it. Okay, and then let's console log our what we get back. So let's console log Formik so we can see what we get back and go from there. Okay, so if we take a look over here, can't resolve. Where did I misspell Formik? I think I just need to refresh. Oh, my server just kind of died. So let's do that. Use. Oh, I did spell it wrong. Formik. There we go. Okay, let's open up. So I got this object. So we see here, we see all the things that are inside that Formik object we get back. Okay, so see there's a lot of stuff in there. Okay, I don't necessarily need all of it. So see there's like some pieces for validation if you go deeper into how Formik works. There is my submit function. But here, that's really the function I want, handle submit and handle change. Okay, and then I'm assuming handle reset be to reset the form. So these are all things that are in there. Get field props. So there's a lot of cool stuff in here. I'm sure if we go through the documentation, we can learn what all these things are. But just for your basic form, what all I really want to destructure from here, so I'm going to destructure, is values, handle submit, and handle change. Okay, so I'll destructure those out of there. Okay, so no longer need to console log this. Okay. And the good thing about destructuring is like all those other properties I'm not going to use. So that makes it where there's these standing variables and the rest of it gets garbage cleaned, which is just going to be, one, my code looks cleaner because saying values is a lot easier than saying Formik.values. But at the same time, also my code is a little bit more efficient memory-wise. Okay, so now we'll go back and create our form. So now I'll just create like a standard form and see, and then, you know, a form has an onSubmit event. So onSubmit will equal the handle submit from Formik. Then I'm going to create my input. Actually, I'll just use Emmet. Input. I can't use Emmet here. Boo. Input. Input type equals text. And then we just have to do the usual, like the value has to be bound to this to the values object, so equals values values.name, because this is essentially what the values object is going to start out at. So it's initially that. And then I need to connect the on change event equals handle change. Okay, and there we go. Okay, also I need to make sure this is a name. Name equals a name. It has to match the name of the object, I'm assuming. Let me make sure they're doing that. Do I need to do that this time? Yeah, I do. Okay. Cool. Then I'll create the other input. Input type equals number. Name equals age. Value equals values dot age. And on change equals handle change. Okay, and then we just put our submit button. Input type equals submit. Value click me. And there we go. We have our form created. Okay, now theoretically, if this works right, okay, every time I type in this box, I should see Alex. And then I can put an age, 35. And then I click this, I should see a console log. And there it is, Alex 35. Okay, it's running what I put in my on submit function whenever handle submit runs. And it's updating the state. So if I were to go to my my React Dev Tools, okay, and I go in the app, I take a look in here, and I can see there's the Formik hook. So see, I see the use Formik hook in there. And in there, we have all sorts of stuff going on. So let me just pull this up a little bit so you can see this a little bit better. Okay, there's a reducer. There seems to be a reducer in there. Let's take a look at the reducer. Is that where my stuff is? Like, see, there's the values. And let's see if I type further in there. I just type in 2222. See, it's updating. It's updating the state every time I change the form. Okay, and it's keeping track of a bunch of other stuff, which I'm sure we could take advantage of, like validation and whatnot, all in this library. That's all pretty cool. All this stuff to make our life a little bit easier. Okay. I'm not sure what the ref's doing for us, but we have all these things there. So that's it. It just makes life using forms easier. You could do more stuff with Formik. You can actually create validations where it'll actually validate the different fields and make sure they are what they have. You can basically define a function that says, okay, if this function is true, then the form data is valid. If not, tell people that like you give them a message saying, hey, this data isn't correct, or something like that, like, hey, this is not an email. So there's different things you can do with Formik, which is pretty cool. But the basic part of doing a form, a little bit easier. Okay, you don't have to manually write that handle change function. A lot of that logic gets encapsulated in using this hook, and you just plug the pieces where you would normally plug them in. So that's pretty cool. My name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. If you like the video, like and subscribe. Make sure to head over to devnursery.com and join the Slack and Discord communities. I'll see y'all around. Feel free to reach out to me in those communities, and I'll see you around.